There are homes in Ottawa right now that I would not wish on my worst enemy. Most buyers have no idea what they're walking into. I've sold over 1,000 homes in Ottawa across the city since 2002. And within 30 seconds, I can usually tell if it's a nope. So today I'm going to break down the 5 types of Ottawa houses I would never buy, plus the red flags so you don't accidentally buy one. So these 5 are: number 1, environmental context. So what's happening around the house? Number 2, the money pits tied to Ottawa's building eras and material. Number 3, sloppy flips. How to spot lipstick on a pig. Number 4, bad neighborhood factors, curb appeal killers that you can't control. And number 5, bad lots. So steep grading, drainage, and hidden site risk. Most buyers just get tunnel vision. It's the kitchen and it's the ensuite that usually they fall in love with, and then they buy this property and they can't return it. It's not like going to the grocery store, buying something you don't want, a canned good, and then you just return it. Once you buy it, it's yours. Land transfer tax, fees, costs. You do not want to make this mistake. Ottawa will punish you for that. The smart move. So let's zoom out. Number 1, the environmental context. So geographically speaking, where the home actually sits in proximity to other major things happening. So first being, if you're under an approach or departure path at the airport. So the areas I'm talking about would be Hunt Club, Greenboro, South Keys, Riverside South, Finley Creek, parts of Barhaven. Plain noise can be regular and you'll get used to it. But is that something that you want to have to get used to? And it's not just like, okay, let's do a geo map and figure out where the airport is and then just do a string line. Like I was in Barhaven yesterday showing a property, and this was like Barhaven, Stranraer, Woodruff. And we came out of the house and like you could just hear this plane right over top of us. And I don't know if it's the way the wind was going. I'm not a pilot. I don't get it. I take a lot of planes. They're great. But like, I do not know why. Like I would not have thought that Barhaven was in that area. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't the right property for this client. I've personally owned 3 properties in Barhaven. I've lived there. So it's pockets of Barhaven and pockets of Riverside South, Finley Creek. So it's not just like, okay, cool. Airport's here, string line 1 kilometer. You're going to hear it. That's not the way it is. You got to really know specifically where these planes are taking off and landing, depending on where the wind is. So the hack on that is, visit at different times of the day. Go into, do some research on Google. Have your realtor go and check the property. Check with some of the neighbors. Don't just go on like a quiet Sunday when there's not a lot of air traffic. Ottawa also has a freight rail and passenger rail via rail. Plus, we have the O train. So where I'm going on this is, what is the proximity of your property to railway lines on that? The LRT is not that loud. The east-west is an electric train. The north-south right now is diesel, so you can hear it. But the train that is more loud would be the via rail train. And that, once it gets going, when it's coming into intersections, it does blow that horn pretty loud. Now, a lot of the railway passages and stuff are either, under a tunnel or over above. So it's not like there are guardrails coming down, but it is quite, you can hear it going. And there are property that some would suggest, oh, it's premium lot, there's no properties behind, but you're backing onto a train. So how frequent is that? And this is all information you can easily search online to identify, but being aware and prepared for that is important. The next, talking about geographically where you are, is it backing on the highway? So our highways in Ottawa would be 417, 416, 174. Then you get into smaller arteries like Carling, Hunt Club, Baseline. These are not highways. They're not 100-kilometer-an-hour properties, but 80 kilometer an hour, like cars are moving pretty fast. In real estate, I kid, we're showing property and people are like, oh, I can hear that. I can hear that car. I'm like, just close your eyes. It sounds like waves going by. But like, that's a joke, but it's not something that you're going to want in your backyard. You don't want that surprise. So the hack on this is make sure you're going to the properties at different times. Like again, if you go on a Sunday morning, you may not really get the full appeal of where that property is. Another one that I think gets missed is hydro corridor. So there's a visual stigma with hydro lines. What is it? What's the exact dollar amount? It's not out there. One of my really good friends is a property appraiser. I'm like, what dollar amount do you put on a property where there's a hydroline? He's like, Liam, like it's not 20, it's not 50, it's not 100. It depends. What it means though is if there's 10 buyers looking for a property, guaranteed 3 to 4 of those buyers will not even show up. They say, oh, hydroline, I'm not interested. So you're cutting down your demand. We talk about how value is established in residential real estate and in any market, supply and demand. When you start to cut down the demand, you're cutting down the actual dollar you're going to receive. So being aware of the hydro corridor, you can usually see that at a showing, but just depending on where it is and how many streets apart, it's important to know. Another would be fire, emergency, paramedic, garages. Like they're in and out all the time, and it's great for safety, but extremely rough on sleeping. So you want to know where these fire stations and emergency vehicle locations are. Next, I love good school districts. I really do. I think they're great. But directly across the street means pickup, chaos, evening events, and weekend tournaments. I'll give you an example where my wife and I live in Westboro, beautiful area, I would say, but it's down from a school. We picked it intentionally for our young family. But what we're noticing is we're 3 streets away. The amount of traffic that goes up and down our road between September and June, between 8:37 and 9:12 a.m. is ridiculous. Now, we don't have people parking in front of our house, which is cool, but we have like 10 times the amount of traffic in that short window of time than we do the entire week that we're living there. Now, is this a deal breaker? Are we going to move because of it? No. Would we have rather known about that before we bought the property? Yes. So something to be aware of is look where the school is, find out different times when the school is in session. And it's not a bad idea to not just book a formal showing to go through them, but just like get active around the neighborhood at different times. Some people buy a property, they go once they buy it, fine, but like just be aware that this is not a transaction. It's not just like, let's return it after a while. So if you want to be an astute buyer and make sure you have no regrets, my advice to you is go back different times of the day, different days of the week, just to make sure you know what you're up against. Another thing to be careful from the environmental aspect is floodplains along the Ottawa River, sections of the Rideau, Jock, Ottawa River, sections of the Rideau, around the Jock River, Carp, Pinecrest, Sawmill Creek, different pockets. It can be tricky if you're not from the area, or even if you are from the area. The best advice on that is check with Geo Ottawa. So online, Geo Ottawa, or go to RVCA, so Rideau Valley Conservation. I just went there last week. They're like the most friendly people out there. I'd always been like a little bit intimidated going to RVCA because they're the governing body for anything related to water. So if you're buying a property, a waterfront property, or concerned about flooding or that, they're the ones that have the 100-year floodplain map. They can advise on what the risk is. If you're about to build something close to the water, they have power and you have to okay it with them. So RVCA, there's a couple of locations around, one out in Manotick, one in Carleton Place, but they are just a wealth of knowledge and can really fast track this for you. What I've done for you is I've made an Ottawa 21 red flags and things to be aware of in 60 seconds. It's a checklist. You can grab it in the description below. I pinned it in the comments. Take it with you to the showing just to fast track this for you. So number 2, money pits. So the era is gotcha. Every era has a gotcha. Here are the Ottawa specific ones that can torch a budget in minutes. First being PolyB. So PolyB showed up in parts of Ottawa suburbs. What it is a gray flexible line, often with plastic or brass fittings. The problem with PolyB is over time, it has shown a tendency to fail prematurely, often leading to leaks and floods inside your home. So this is a pressurized line of water that will deteriorate over time, come loose, and then just start pouring in. And it's usually behind a wall. So you're not going to know about it until it starts to seep through. Extremely dangerous. A lot of insurance companies will balk at this. What's the cost? Well, to repipe a home, it's anywhere from say 10 right up to like $25,000, $30,000. The next would be KitTech. So this was in 1995 to 2007, common in some townhomes, but more in condominiums. The problem is corrosion takes place over time and can weaken the brass fittings. The technical term is called dezenification. So similar to the PolyB, we're talking about plumbing, more specifically supply lines. So water that is like going through will actually, like a joint will come loose and then water will just keep pouring. And by the time you figure it out, because it's coming through your wall, it's a massive, massive flood behind. So to repipe a condominium, could be anywhere from like $20,000 to $40,000. Homes would likely be more expensive because they're bigger, more pipes. Another thing to be aware of would be aluminum wiring. So this happened in the late 60s and into the 70s. This happens quite often. We see properties with aluminum wiring in it. With proper termination, it's okay, or approved pigtailing. This is when they put, a pigtail of copper on top of the aluminum wiring. I'll give you an example. We recently sold a condominium off Ogilvy Road. Great property. I think it sold for around $422,000. Year built was 1972. This property had aluminum wiring. Buyer liked the property, put the offer in, going through the conditional period. Home inspector, timeout, aluminum wiring. Buyer's like, oh no, what do? I still want to buy the property. Obviously, this hasn't burnt down. A lot of people live here. What's our solution? Fast track it for you. What it is they needed an ESA report. So Electrical Safety Authority report, which is provided. The seller went out and got that, proving to the buyer that the home was safe. It had the proper approved pigtails. This was paramount because this particular buyer was unable to get insurance without this ESA report. Next, on the electrical theme, knob and tube wiring. So this is in century homes between 1900 and 1930. You usually find these types of properties in like more established neighborhoods like Glebe, Old Ottawa South, Hintonburg, New Edinburgh, parts of Westboro. It can often trigger insurance concerns. And the problem with this is it can cause fire. It's also not designed for the modern electrical load that most appliances use. And there's no ground wire. So GFI, so ground fault circuit interrupter, won't work. Not to get too electrical on you, but any type of hair dryer or mixer, anything that you're using near a sink, you need a GFI, so ground fault circuit interrupter, in case that tool or hair dryer or piece of equipment you're using falls into the sink. You're not going to get electrocuted, so it automatically shorts. Well, knob and tube wiring, it doesn't have the ability for that. So knob and tube wiring is not good. It's not the end of the world. It's just you need to budget appropriately to rewire the house. Now looking at more of like stucco and insulation and asbestos, EIFS, EIFS was a type of stucco back in the 90s and early 2000s. The biggest problem with this is moisture was trapped behind this type of stucco, which caused costly structural damage because you didn't find out until after usually years that the water had been sitting there. So it was creating all this mold and breaking down the structure behind. What to do if you're up against this? Get a specialist that can really inspect the moisture behind there. The quickest thing is your inspector will likely have a moisture detector that he can just check to see what the rating is. Now let's talk about asbestos. So asbestos came in between 1920 and 1970. It shows up in many parts of Ottawa, usually older houses, obviously 1920 to 1970, and it's manageable if you handle it correctly. Treat vermiculite as suspected until the lab test comes available. So what you do is do not disturb it. Don't get into doing your own DIY pot lights. You don't want to start to really disturb anything. If you plan renovations or you want to go through with something, make sure to budget for professional abatement and then re-insulate. Other common concerns would be asbestos containing material in the pre-1990s. Both fibril and non-fibril both exist. So watch for popcorn ceiling or stipple ceiling, certain plasters, 9x9 vinyl tiles. Sometimes you see them on the floor, or plastic mosaic, old sheet linoleum with paper or felt on it. Some duct insulation uses to kind of mask it, like a bit of a masking tape. So how to verify? Well, I had a situation recently in our home. Our home, is a century home, was built in 1920. My wife and I are looking at doing some renovations. We weren't sure. So we contacted a local company in Ottawa. They came into our home and took a sample. They had to cut out 3 samples, 1 in the ceiling, 2 on exterior walls. They went through the drywall and then into the plaster. They took the samples and then they brought away to get tested. In terms of cost, it's about $100 to have them on site. and it's $50 a sample. So quick math, we paid $250 for this, and then they produce a result to use of do you have asbestos or do you not? Now, it's no concern today because as long as it's tucked away, it's not going to affect us. It's just we're considering a renovation. So we want to know what's going to happen once we start to open things up. So bottom line, asbestos is not a deal breaker. It's the cost and a process. Test first, price it, and use professionals to abate it, meaning take it out if you need to. All right, so number 3, sloppy flips. So what I mean that is flipping property. There are a lot of people in Ottawa that have a pickup truck, that have a hammer, and are flippers. Now, there are some good flippers, there are some bad flippers. In fact, my best friend flips properties. He does a fantastic job. He does it the right way. And I want to share with you maybe some of the red flags to be aware of. So the first being not getting permits. So a flip is someone buys a property at a depressed price. Likely it needs flooring. Likely it hasn't been opened up. It's older, right? So people are buying property, maybe $100,000, $200,000 of what that property could be worth. They're putting about $100,000 into it and then they're flipping it. Just fine. Like I'm a DIY guy myself. You might be also. It's fine to paint and put up drywall and do trim. Where the concern is permits. So a lot of flippers are trying to make property more open concept. So they're taking out walls, which is cool. It's great. But are you getting a permit? More specifically, what does the structure look like once you do that? I'm sure it looks great, but physically, how is it? If you're taking out walls, can the load above support that? The other big thing to be aware of is the electrical. If they're touching electrical, you have to be really aware. Did they have a licensed electrician doing it, or were they just doing it sort of off YouTube and hoping it would work? The electrical can be very serious and dangerous. Think of fire. So how you overcome all of this is you ask for permits and you ask for an ESA certificate. ESA stands for Electrical Safety Authority Certificate. This is your best proof whenever you're trying to get insurance on a type of flip. They're going to want to know that the electrical is safe. See, I find a lot of flippers, it's cosmetic. So lipstick on a pig over the core. So they'll put in the new quartz countertop, but leave the 40-year-old furnace. Or they'll put new tile over soft floors. They're not going to shore them up. They're just like quickly trying to put new tile in. And then in like 6 or 12 months, when you move in, it's going to be all shaky or the tiles are going to crack. They'll put a brand new deck over a older deck that might be sagging. They're going to be staging magic in photos with virtual photos, but in person, you see it simply lipstick on a pig. So just be really aware of that. The way to overcome that is get permits and make sure that there's been an ESA on it. Churn is also a telltale. If this home has been resold multiple times in a few years, you got to ask why. Ottawa's average length of time that someone lives in a property someone sells is every 7 years. So if you're seeing property turn every 6 to 12 months, that's a big red flag to me. If I don't know the flipper's reputation, I assume corners were cut until the paperwork proves otherwise. Number 4, bad neighborhood factors. You can renovate a kitchen, but you can't renovate the house next door. Entrenched neglect next door, overgrowth, hoarded exteriors, garages full of stuff. You can tell just by you're driving down. If you see garage doors open, what does their garage look like? These are all telltale signs of what your neighbors might be like. Chronic on-street parking pressures. So is there any room for on-street parking? Say you're having Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter dinner. Where is family going to park? Nightlife or venue spillover. How close are you to other major attractions? How to vet this? Drive by the block after 9 p.m. Check during school pickup. Check during new snow event. You want to know what's happening around the street. Number 5, bad lots. I kept this to the end. I think it's probably the number one whenever I'm buying real estate is you have to buy the best, most premium lot. A beautiful home on a bad lot is still a bad buy. I can say that again. A beautiful house on a bad lot is still a bad buy. Steep uphill driveways. Think of like Mount Everest. How is that going to work in the winter? It's going to be a nightmare. Or deep sloping, like the Grand Canyon towards the house. Consider the spring runoff. Where's all this water going to go? Can that catch basin take it? Or is it water just going to rush into the property? Think of the sump pump working overtime. Low bowl backyard. So What is the drainage like? We always want negative slope, but we want water going away from the property. If you've ever have water issues, it is like the biggest nightmare of home ownership. It is the worst because you don't know where the water's coming from. So making sure you're buying a property that is high and dry is critical. Mini story for you. First property I ever bought was on a hill and it flooded. So do not get like preoccupied with like, oh, high and dry, it's on a hill. How that has happened to me, property in Mantic on Highcroft, 1173 Highcroft, top of a hill. There is a artesian well below. So an actual like well, like just spitting water out. I'd have 2 sumps put in that. I'd excavate around. Property's great now. There's a battery backup, no issue. But when I bought the property, I didn't know that. It wasn't disclosed to me. This was 24 years ago that I bought the property. So just because you're on a hill doesn't mean you're not going to have water issues. You need to ask and get further due diligence from the seller to make sure, what does it actually happen on a day-to-day? What is it like in the springtime thaw? Then it becomes a fix or a flee. You know, are you going to do some grading issues, downspout required, battery backup, or is it like, I don't want this water management problem, I'm out. If the site is fighting gravity, think twice. So Ottawa due diligence game plan. Here's the workflow I give my clients day in and day out. Number 1, map it. Use GeoWarehouse for flood layers, easements, and permit history. Use Google Maps for flight paths, rail, and artilleries. Number 2, time test it. Weekday rush, late night, weekend daytime. Number 3, neighbors. Knock on a couple doors. Ask about noise. What does drainage look like? Parking, snow, how's it going to be? Number 4, system age audit. Roof, HVAC, windows, sump. Estimate for 5 years spend. And number 5, the era scan. So what I mean by that is 1950s, knob and tube, 1965 to 1976, aluminum wiring, late 70s to 90s, PolyB, KitTech, risk, some condos, 90s to 2000s, some of that stucco. And number 6, permits and ESA for any property that has had a flipper or a DYI. Number 7, asbestos screening and testing for pre-1990s homes. Identify if there is any asbestos in the property. Get quotes for abatement. Build it into your overall strategy. And number 8, rural due diligence. So if you're buying on a rural property, septic inspection, water potability, and the flow and age of the pump coming in. Do all of these and you'll avoid 90% of the I didn't know surprises I see in Ottawa. Don't let pretty photos blind you. Ottawa rewards buyers that zoom out and check the era specific of the property and respect the lot that it sits on. And be sure to grab my free 21 flags in 60-second checklist below in the description. It's the cheat sheet I wish every buyer carried with them. And once you know what to avoid, the next big question is how much home can you actually afford? Well, in my next video right here, I break down exactly what price range makes sense based upon your salary so you can shop with confidence. Check out this video right now.